Hello, Marina, and welcome to the Martin Talk Show. It's so nice to meet you. So nice to speak to you today, and I'm really excited to find out about your show that you're going to be taking to the Edinburgh Fringe. Love in the time of the fifth grade. I'm intrigued. Tell me a
I
little bit
know.
about your show.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Um, yeah, love in the time of fifth grade, as I like to say, very simple. I hit my sensual peak in elementary school.
Mhm.
It all kind of started because I went through this phase in my early 20s where I didn't go on a single date for 5 years, not
Okay.
even a casual coffee. And there were a lot of factors as to why this happened. I was like working crazy hours. I was working 2:30 to 10:30 a.m. on the weekends.
Hmm.
I was living with my parents. Like it was sort of a time of upheaval. But more importantly, I think there was a big part of me that was sort of saying no to love. Like, this is too complicated in my life. And, it's better if I just kind of cut dating and relationships sort of out of my life.
Hmm.
Um, and then one day I sort of realized, like, wow, I'm really lonely. I'm really yearning for this. And it especially happened because I have so many stories from when I was in elementary school and I was really going for it, as they say. Like I was kissing boys and biting boys. I was writing love letters. I was in and out of the principal's office because of all of these things. And so I would always tell these stories. And I was always thinking to myself, like, what happened? Like, how did I go from this, like, really courageous, 10-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever. And then I hit puberty and everything just like exploded. And so that's sort of what the show is about. It's sort of talking about, this time when I was at my peak, let's say, and then I kind of compare them to some horrible dating stories, which we've all had the displeasure of going through. And kind of arriving at, why was it that I went through that? And why is it that I'm choosing not to do that again?
Yeah, and it sounds to me like you're choosing to share a really honest look at your life with this story. How do you even begin to start doing that? Where does that begin?
I think it begins. Well, I'll say that this show had many iterations. So, in a way, I've been working on this show for the last 10 years, sort of on and off in different capacities. It actually used to be called, it used to be more of a character piece that I called Desert of Labia. And
Okay.
it was about how I was the sheriff to the ghost town of my vagina. So, it was a little bit more, let's say, forward. And it used to have like puppetry and all this stuff. And I kind of got like bigger than me in a way where I sort of like lost myself, where I was like, I feel like I'm just trying to put everything in here and I don't really even know what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
so I kind of looked at my materials again and I said, the thing that really speaks to me, that I think comes naturally to me, that I think really gets at the core here are these stories from my elementary school. And they're stories I've told many times, and they're kind of were the pieces that I latched onto. One of the things I go into in my show is, so I have a 7-year age gap with my sister. She's
Mhm.
7 years older than me, which means when I was 7, she was 14, which doesn't sound like a big age difference, but at 14, you're fully like boy
Things yeah,
crazy zone.
yeah, everything changes around that time,
Everything
and
changes, and she
yeah,
was
and it
so into boys, and as a consequence of that, I think I absorbed, the teen girl at 7 in a way. Um, and so these stories always really stuck out to me in my mind. They were very formative for me always. Also because I always got called in the principal's office and always got scolded. So, I sort of started with that and these sort of core stories. And then I wonder what was the shift. I think I just sort of sat down and decided, let me just write out all my dating stories. And then from there, sort of worked on like what can flow together, what really shows the best examples of a time when I was like at my most strong and at my time when I was at my most pathetic, and kind of look at how they were connected. And so kind of went from there. So to your question, I I sat down and I just kind of threw up everything onto the page. And kind of
Wonderful.
once I was done, yeah, exactly. Once I was done getting all of that out, kind of taking the step back and being like, so what are the really formative big pieces here
Mhm,
that I also find obviously funny, even though it was sort of a dark period for me, it was really important to me to find like I really think for me, the most healing thing in general about humor is when something really rough happens to you and maybe a couple years later, maybe a couple days later, you're able to step back and laugh about it.
mhm.
And so that was the other thing was like, what are these stories that I've been maybe scared to share with some of my friends even or my parents, let's say, because they're just like too embarrassing or too whatever and kind of sitting with myself being like, am I ready to am I laughing at this now? Like, am I ready to share this? And so a lot of the stories I would say from the current day kind of came from that motivation of like, I think I'm ready to tell everybody about this horrific, comically
Right.
horrific experience I had.
And so what does that do for you when you share like this, when you share within theatre and you share it in a creative way? Because I know there's many out there that won't fully understand. I'm a performer as well in my past, so I kind of get it. But I know that there's people out there that that would go to say a psychiatrist to get all of this out and to spread this. But there's something different that happens within the power of theatre, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. I think for me, obviously, I'm very inspired by theater. I think that's not a surprise to anybody who comes across this podcast. I think we're all, theater lovers
Hmm.
and have a deep history connection to that. Even people who are strictly comedy, they all had a comedian or somebody that they looked up to. And I
Hmm.
think for me, it is always that feeling of feeling really seen. Like I'm always still taken back by when I go to see some show and there's a moment where the performer shares something and I think to myself like, wow, I thought I was the only person who went through something like this or who ever had that thought. And so that's something that for me is a big part of why, performing is really inspiring to me is looking out and seeing people like I can tell when they're like, wow, I remember this thing or like, wow, you're right. The number of times I've had people go like, yeah, girl, from the back and like, there's something really again like encouraging to us all where it's like to be seen.
Hmm.
Um I honestly think that's a big part of the motivation of my show in general was during those kind of 5 years, I was like, I don't want to be perceived by anybody. And so in coming to terms with that in my personal life, it was like, let me also be seen in this space. And maybe it'll encourage other people to want to put themselves out there more. I think we have kind of on a social front, I feel like it's more hard than ever
Hmm.
to kind of go up to people and introduce yourself. And because everything is so like online, everything's sort of so direct. And so what has been great for me in this show is like it inspires me to have to, I have to like honor myself in this show and honor little me, as I would say. And sort of
Yes.
it is encouraging me to put myself out there. And that's what I hope it does for the audience as well, is that, it motivates them to say, well, if that girl can get up there and tell all these embarrassing stories, then I guess I can live with mine in my heart. One time, I always think back to this moment where I was at my gynecologist for my annual checkup. So I'm, legs up in the stirrups, as they say, like going through my exam. And my gynecologist was like talking to me about my comedy stuff. And I'll never forget, she was like, wow, that's so brave. Like, I can't believe you even do that. And then she proceeded to do my exam. And I was like, I can't believe you do this every day. So like, I just think, there's something always inspiring. By trying to I'm not that I'm trying to actively inspire others, but in trying to inspire myself, I find that that's sort of the train exhaust that also happens. And, that's something that I yearn for when I go to the theater, and that's something I hope to give back.
Yeah, there's definitely something magical that happens in that space where we're all connecting, where there's one person sharing something, but we're all. It's kind of like there's an opportunity for a mirror up on that stage to go. Oh, hold on a second. I'm not alone here. I'm not the only one. Not every single story connects, not every single person connects, but something deeper happens in the theatre space. I'm always calling it the empathy machine, the theatre. I'm on a bit of a mission actually to change the name of the theatre to the empathy machine because it's so powerful, that empathy that happens there.
Yeah, it's true. And
Mhm.
it's also it's a safe place for people, I think, to feel these feelings,
Yeah.
like even more so than when you're watching Netflix and then washing your plates at the same time, like it's very
Mhm.
easy, there are obviously some TV shows and some movies that, you can get wrapped into,
Yeah, but
but
there's a
it's
barrier
harder.
between us there, isn't there? When we watch TV, when we watch movies, there's the screen there. There's a very I love movies, I love TV, but there's a slight disconnect when you're in the theatre space, when you're somewhere like at the Edinburgh Fringe, you're in a room together. And there's the people that are there with you as well.
Exactly. And you can't look away. I'm a person that when movies get too intense or even too funny, I have
Okay.
to hide. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can't take the intensity." And that's what I love about theaters. You can't you can't
Mm,
do that. I mean, you can always squirm a little bit in your seat, of course, but, it is something about that communal shared experience, that
mhm,
I find always has more of a lasting impression,
mhm.
um, and memory.
There was something else you said that I want to go back on as well. That's quite important. I think you said about doing this for your little me. Who who and what is your little me then?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I always think about little me in 5th grade. That's when I had my, like, big love that I talk about from that time. He was a guy who I refer to as Luke, and, he was sort of like the end all be all for me at the time. Like, he at the end of 4th grade, he told me I was one of the guys, and I was like, "Wow, he's obsessed with me." You know what I mean? And he was the one where I could, like, envision this whole life and whatever, and then I sent him a very classy note, I would say, which was, "Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe." Um, which he returned with no.
Oh.
And that was devastating to me at the
Mhm.
time. Um, but, little me wasn't even like, today, if I sent, "Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe," and somebody sent no back, game over. I would be sitting at home crying, calling 7 different people, like, "Can you believe?" And then getting angry, like, "He's a jerk," or whoever the person is. But little me was, like, unfazed. Little me was like, okay, I hear you. I hear this,
Mhm.
but I can change this," which is, like, is a little unhinged, is a little deranged, within reason.
Mhm.
But, that's like the little me that I hold on to, is that person who, kind of doesn't take no for an answer, who, also just, like, kind of had no sense of, like, maybe I'm going too far with this. Like, one of the stories that I share about this love that I had in 5th grade, was that we had this intense moment where basically he threatened to spit on me.
Okay.
Which I think,
As
again, if a
children
person
sometimes do.
as children often do, right? Which, as an adult, if someone threatened to spit on you, you would be like, 911,
Yeah.
here in the United States, 911, Um, uh, but he threatened to spit on me, and at the time, I thought, "Well, that's a kiss." I was like, "This
Mhm.
is getting heated hot," right? And so, um, you know, kind of moments like that where it was like, in the most extreme way, taking a negative and turning it to positive and being like, again, in any other moment where you would be like, ew, no, which again, as adults, I'm not advocating for that. But I am saying that, there was, I think back to like, in a way, how beautiful, like the beautiful mind, like how
Mhm.
beautiful that's how my mind worked at the time, where it was like, I was so committed to like the destiny that I had with this 10-year-old child that like there was nothing that was going to sort of like affect that.
Mhm.
Until then we got called into the principal's office yet again, story of my life. And then at the time I was actually a bus patrol on the bus. So like I was essentially a bus cop. So I was definitely not supposed to be engaging in spinning, let's say. And so bus cops at the end of the year, they got a free trip to the state fair. And so the principal did sort of say, like, if you continue to engage in this behavior, you're not going to go to the state fair.
Mhm.
And I even think about little me then was like, oh, then I'm done with this. Like just having that thing of like, you know what? this is not even worth it. Like state fair all the way, Whereas
Yeah.
again, today I'd be like, oh no, like just like crippled with this like overthinking in a way, So when I talk about little me, it's like really like that energy, that, you know, kind of like flavor for life. Was she paying attention to her academics at all? No. But
It sou
that's like
it sounds to me like little me had a little bit more sense of a freedom that some way, and it happens to most of us as we become adults. Lots of rules get put into place. Society, we start to overthink society and how we're going to fit in, and all these things that all of a sudden we have to do. Like I say, the rules impact on us all of a sudden, don't they? So, at what point did you notice a change for yourself then, that you became separated from that younger version of yourself, and change and your mindset shifting into a different way of thinking?
yeah, well, puberty is a crazy thing.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that's where I feel like a lot of the shift really came for me where, like I actually don't mention this in my show, but there was a real like in middle school, I feel like is when I really felt that thing about like I was staring daggers at the back of boys' heads in my class, being like, this is going to get through, like through telepathy. He's going to understand like the intense passion that I have,
Mhm.
and kind of being met with like, you're really weird, you know? Um, and there's a part of me that understands why, you get that response and maybe you clam up a bit, and you say, maybe I should dial it back." But there's a part of me that is actually really kind of speaking to what I was saying about how little me sort of doubled down, like saying, okay, how can I show my deep burning desire for this 12-year-old kid without saying, you know what, actually, I'm just going to hide in a corner
Mhm.
and hope that he never perceives me ever again. Like I feel like that is the kind of crucial lesson that nobody sort of goes over. I feel like we're all used to this narrative that's put on us that's like, okay, well, when you get to puberty, you want to hide in a corner and you don't want anybody to see you. And that's okay. Which, like, it is. Obviously, I'm not here to bully people, but I wish there could be more of a narrative flip that's like, okay, well, you don't have to like hide in the corner a bit, but like maybe
Mhm.
like take a beat to be like, I can't be as forward maybe as I was in elementary school, but is there a kinder way that I can, kind of show my affection? I don't know if that makes sense, but like I wish somebody had told me that. I wish somebody had
Mm.
said like, hey, you're being a little intense, but you should still ask that boy on a date or ask that boy for a dance. Like one of the stories I mention is I had this crush in 10th grade. It was like this guy who I thought was like an Adonis, okay? And we were in the school play together, and he had to wear spats, which are like the old-timey shoe cover things that you snap up.
Mhm.
And in, instead of kind of going to him and being like, hey, we talk a lot, I think we get along, like if you need a date to prom, I'm right here, I was like, I will snap up his spats every night for him because it'll like telegraph to him, like, I'm full of duty and I'm full of honor and I would be an acceptable prom date, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And um, sure enough, one night he's like, I have a big question to ask you. And I'm like, what is it? And he says, do you think I can take Karen to prom? And Karen was this very popular girl in my class who was doing the play because she was bored, which was, as you could probably tell, an affront to me and you, because we obviously do everything for the craft, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, like, I think back on that moment a lot because there's a part of me that's like, if I had just maybe gone to him and said, like, hey, I'm really into you. And, if you could take me to prom, or not even take me to prom, but just I'm into you. I hope you just know that, like the worst he could have said is like, no, right? Which would have been devastating. But at the same time, it was just as devastating to be sort of friend zoned and passed over for Karen, right? Like that was
Yeah,
a
of course.
formative memory for me for a very long time where I was like, oh, I get, and like what the lesson I learned from that is like, oh, boys aren't into me. It's like, what a sad thought,
Whereas
And I think like a
it's just one boy. It's not boys. It's just one person. Listening to your story and what you've been through. It sounds to me like there's a deep passion in you to share love with others, and you might not necessarily have been around the right people for sharing that love with at your level.
right, exactly. He did later tell me I'd make the perfect mom, which
Okay.
I think speaks to, we just had Mother's Day here in the United States, speaks to sharing love, I think. But exactly, it was like I had this very fervent intensity about sort of romantic love that, to your point, I think just because I was dealing with teenage boys did not manifest well. And then I sort of carried like, and then that was the mistake or that was the lesson I took into my young adulthood.
Mm.
And so, our 20s are a very sort of mixed bag time where we're sort of sorting through. I think the 20s are really just like, okay, what did I learn when I was in school that's relevant to me? And what did I learn that I need to sort of unlearn and forget about? You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
because school does teach us a lot of good things. It teaches us routines. It teaches us structure. If you were forced to play a sport against your will, like I was, it taught you about fitness. You know what I mean? Like sort of what it is to, but it also teaches a lot of these very sort of sometimes stringent, sometimes, very, the once you get out into the world, like you can really find your group, your niche, people who, really respond to how you are. And that's not always guaranteed in high school or even college, I would say.
Yeah, it's
So
when you're in high school and college, you're stuck with a group of people that the most common thing you have especially here in the UK is a postcode. It's like an area code. It's just about where you live. It isn't about any of your personality traits. It isn't about any of the things you like or love. Whereas when you move into your 20s, you've got an opportunity to then really find people, but you've also got to work out all of them things that didn't work for you previously. I really believe that your 20s are a moment to explore, or they should be at least taken that way. A moment of exploratoriness, is that a word? Like just going out
I
into
accept it.
yeah, just going out into the world and just like finding out what the world is and what and who you are. And actually, yeah, this is like now you can actually find out where you fit, and you can now actually find out who is receiving things on the same love language as me. Because that's
And I think
important in all of this as well, isn't it? We all talk about love, but it means something different to all of us.
exactly. And I think a lot, I mean, I'm guilty person number one. I think when I got to my 20s, I was so scared of that, where it
Hmm.
was like, oh, now I can explore. No, thank you. I'll take my
Yeah, well,
regimented groups, I'll take my regimented schedule and groups. Thank you very much. And I sort of woke up one day and was like, I'm being really silly. Like
mhm.
it happened. So I was in this improv group and which was my first improv group and sort of my first friend group when I moved to New York City, which as we all know, moving to a new city is a nightmare
Mhm. Yeah.
of loneliness. I had one New Year's Eve that I was on call at my job, so I couldn't, like, go home and be with family, so I spent it at home alone, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Well, I'll put on a movie," and I put on Ex Machina. Big
Yeah.
mistake. I don't know if you've seen that film.
Yeah.
Huge mistake to watch alone on New Year's Eve. I was like, "Well, 'kay,
Now I'm depressed.
yeah, like 2018 is gonna be a great year for me," you know? And so, it all sort of happened because I was, like, part of this improv group, and I sort of developed this, like, crush on one of my improv teammates, and I just had this, like, full regimented behavior that was like, "No, we can't express any maybe tentative, feelings towards this person because, we have to get to Saturday Night Live, and we're getting to Saturday Night Live through this improv group." Like this kind of like fervent intensity about it that was misguided. And uh kind of having that day where I was like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, let me just take a chance on this guy in my improv group, and maybe it'll blow up the improv group, and maybe that's okay. Like, maybe this is the time for me to be blowing up improv groups. And, to your point, like trying new things and putting myself out there. And I think, there's a lot in our teen years that's reinforced about no, do the safe thing, do the
Mhm.
correct thing. You got to get into the right university, you have to get into the right program, all these different things. And then it can take a long time to sort of let that melt away and then
Mhm.
embrace, I think some people, and God bless them, are like, very free spirits, and they get to their 20s, they get to just rip off the mask, and they're like, "Hell yeah," like, "This is where I've wanted to be this entire time."
Mhm.
I wish that was me. And so I'm trying to get 10% of that every day back a little bit.
So 10%, that's big. That's big. That's
I
big
know,
strides.
I know. I'm
10%.
ambitious, I'm ambitious.
So where are you now then, Marina? Where are you now this podcast isn't just all about entertainment, it's about life and it's about love. And I'm curious for you, where has this put you within in your life right now?
I think, well, what was funny is like after this sort of period, and I sort of had this like radical shift where I said, that's it. Like, I'm going to really put myself out there. And,
Mhm.
as a result of that, I actually like met somebody really special who I was with for more than 6 years. And that relationship, even though it came ultimately to an end, like, I learned so much. I realized like how much I learned from that relationship I would have never learned being by myself, and like navigating the world by myself. I mean, I might have learned different lessons, but
Mhm.
there were so many lessons that I learned from that relationship, so many experiences that I had that even when times may have been tough, let's say, I sort of stepped back and I said, but I'm really grateful that I'm here. Like, I'm really grateful that I'm sort of going through this mess. Not that I'm
Mhm.
saying the relationship is a mess. I'm just saying, and as we all know in our relationships, there can be intense moments.
Mhm.
Like, I'm so glad that I'm going through these moments, and learning what this is, as opposed to like I had that and as I was working on the show, that was the thought I kept coming back to was like how much I've been able to grow, you know, uh putting myself out there, experiencing love, going even when I was in my dating period, like what it was to go on dates and be like what's normal, what's not. Like I think to your point, life is always about exploration at the end of the day. And I
Mhm.
think when you limit yourself or you box yourself, like you don't realize, like life, it's like what they always say about like the couch is very comfortable, but you should work out or get some daily fitness in because like that's what your body wants, right? And like we always do feel better when we go on a walk or, run on a treadmill. I mean, I don't feel better on the treadmill, but you know what I mean. At
Yeah,
least
we
like
have.
getting
I think
movement.
within all of this, yeah, movement is so important. We have to move in life. We have to keep. I love the Disney quote. I think it's so fitting to everything. Disney said, "Just keep moving forward. Whatever it is you're going through, whatever project you're working on, just keep moving forward." It's the sitting still that doesn't help. And yeah, you can have a moment of rest, but essentially, yeah, just keep going forward, whether it's creatively, whether it's in love, everything in life just needs to keep moving.
Yeah, and, you know, and then what's really helpful about that, in addition to just, always, going for something new and being a perpetual student, which is something I really believe in, which is, like, always
Mhm.
continuing to learn. Then
Yeah.
when you look back, you can say, like, even in your darkest moments, you can look back and say, "Well, I'm not 21 years old, watching a movie by myself on New Year's Eve." I think I might have been older than that, doesn't matter, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not watching Ex Machina on New Year's Eve anymore, like, things have changed for me, like, even if this time is really difficult or this thing that
Mhm.
I'm going through is really stressful, whatever it is,
Mhm.
because you continue to have a forward motion. When you look back, it's even more inspiring to keep moving. It sort of becomes its own engine in that way, where you say,
Yeah.
well, I've come this far. The only choice I have is to continue going further.
Yeah.
Um,
And that thing you
so
said about always learning as well, it's that really resonates with me. That really sort of flipped my life upside down when I started to take on that philosophy. And I'll be a bit honest with you, Marina. When I started this podcast, I had some kind of thought that possibly I may be a teacher, and that might be why I was doing this. I thought I would set up a creative academy, and I'd tell everyone how clever I was. But I very, very quickly worked out that I'm the student here. That but
yeah,
it's wonderful, but it's so much better than being the teacher, being the student. It's so much better, and it's, and everything's changed with that one simple mind set shift for me, that
yeah.
learning.
In a way, I was very privileged. My father was a professor for over 40 years. And so I sort of got both edges of the sword, where it was like,
Mhm,
he does love to pontificate, which I
mhm,
love about him, like,
yeah,
unfortunately, I did inherit the need to hear my voice. But at the same time, that was something that he really always was encouraging, was like, in order for me to be the best teacher, like he would
mhm,
always complain about teachers around him who maybe accomplished one paper and then sat on that one paper for 10 or 15 years and never changed a lesson plan or engaged with students. Like, he was always complaining about that. And I really took that lesson to heart from him, where, it is more interesting and more dynamic to try something new, to write a new research paper, to start a new podcast. Every year I try to start a new project of some kind. Doesn't always work out sometimes. Sometimes these projects take longer than you anticipated. But
yeah,
I
and
start with
that's
the
the beauty in it as
intention
well.
of a new project to learn, new skills, new, it's helpful for me, but also it's like, how can I show up in different ways? What is the best way for me to show up in? I think many people come to Edinburgh Fringe are figuring that out.
Mhm.
Um, so it's good that
So
we have a place we can all do that.
so have you experienced the Edinburgh Fringe before, or is this your first time, or is this a return for you?
This is my first time.
Wow,
I'm scared.
of
I'm
course.
sweating.
Yeah.
I'm excited more than anything. It's been a long goal of mine.
Mhm.
Because I studied theater at university, and I said it then. I really loved solo performance work. I was like, I think this is where my voice is. And as one does, you Google
Mhm.
best place for solo show, and
Yeah.
Edinburgh came up, and obviously there's all the stories that we know of success and etc.
Mhm.
And so I've always had my sights sort of set on that, where I was like, this is, kind of where I want to be. And then so as I said, I used to be really more into sort of character monologues type performance, like more like, I would say, like crafted sort of comedic pieces.
Mhm.
And I actually came up with a show that I called Sex Symbols, but symbols was spelt like monkey symbols.
Of course, it did.
And there were these character monologues where I was spoofing. I did Jackie Kennedy as a stripper. I did Anne Margaret selling no pants fashion. For anybody who knows the sex symbol Anne Margaret, she always wore tights and a sweater, and that's it.
Mhm. Right,
Thought
okay.
that was hilarious. I recommend everybody do a little quick Google on her because her dancing is
I will do.
crazy in the best way.
Yep.
Um, I did Marilyn Monroe as a sexy ghost,
Nice.
and
Okay.
then I did Sophia Loren on a date at the Olive Garden, which was personally healing for me as an Italian. So I crafted that show and I did it in New York, and I thought I was going to take that to Edinburgh Fringe. And then, wouldn't you know it, it was March 2020, and that kind of imploded on itself, as we all know. I don't need to speak the Panini's name, as we know.
Yep, yep.
Um, and so in the years after that, I was like, let me take this time to really think about what is the show that I want to bring to Edinburgh. Is it really this character piece, which like I did love and put a lot of hard work in, but I was like, is this really how I want to represent my voice? And then I came back to this idea that I had in 2016. That was, again, a much more complicated puppetry, et cetera, idea. And I said, no, I think there's something here that still resonates with me and still speaks with me. And I think this is what I want to sort of present as being my voice. And then landed on this year by coincidence, as in this year was when I was like, okay, everything's coming together. And this is the time for me to go. So I'm really excited to just kind of like throw myself in and be like, the big question for me is like, is it going to convince me to be a fringer for life? I'd like
Mhm.
to see it
Yeah.
try. Um, just kidding. I'm curious, I in a spirit of, always being curious, always
Mhm.
learning. That's what I'm most excited to find out going, which is like, can I deal with the crazy stress? Do I want to come back?
Yeah, yeah.
In the best way.
Yeah, and it's the Fringe is a magical place. For me, it's somewhere the the first day I arrived, I knew it was somewhere I'd be going for the rest of my life. It's something that I knew that I'd always be connecting with. But it is a different experience for everyone, and it's there's a lot of magic to be had there, but it's also hard work. You know, you're up against 5,000 other shows, and at some periods during the Fringe, there's more people doing theatre than seeing theatre, and you know, it's energy up every day doing a show every single day. It's a big task, but it sounds to me like this is the perfect time for you. It sounds to me like you're ready for that energy.
Yeah. Another part about me, I would say, is that throughout this whole time, I've also had a day job. I work as a TV producer in news,
Mhm.
which you can imagine is stressful and complicated.
Hectic. Yeah.
And, um, um, I had to put in a lot of work to sort of make that career happen so that I could sustain myself.
Mhm.
And in the last couple years, I felt that I finally sort of hit a place where I can finally embrace my creative side and my career. And that's what I feel like Fringe is sort of the testament to for me, where going there for these weeks to fully immerse myself in theater in a way that I like haven't really fully been able to, frankly speaking, is really thrilling and really exciting to me. And as we
Mhm.
talked about with moving forward, like I don't think the me of 4 years ago would have been able to do that. I think the me of four
No.
years ago would have thrown up and been like, take me home, mom. I think like they always say like the hard earned success is like the rewarding success, like I feel
Mhm.
like I've really put in my
100%.
hours and put in my time, and no matter what happens, like for me it's more about honoring that
Mhm.
I've put in all this work and all this time to get to this point where I can fully embrace, this project in this way. And I'm really excited to do that.
Do you have any idea as you look to the Fringe, you've researched it, do you have any idea of what you imagine it's gonna be like? Is there a certain thing that you're excited to experience there?
Um I would say, I think I think it's like I don't have children, so let me say that up front. But I feel like it's like what people say about having children, which is like you can never fully prepare for the experience. Like no matter how
Yeah,
many books you read or people you talk to, you know, like I've
yeah.
talked to a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who are regular fringers, and I appreciate their advice. But I know that I'm just going to get there and I'm probably going to be very overwhelmed,
Mhm.
as I think everybody talks about. But
I love
that's
that
what,
comparing it to a as a parent. I'm a parent myself, and yeah, that's exactly it. There's nothing
right.
in the world that can prepare you to be a parent, and there's nothing in the world that can fully prepare you for the fringe.
So that's like what, this is my birth, by the
Mhm.
way. That's what I'm
Yeah.
interpreting this as. And
Yeah, I
so,
bet.
we've been very birth focused in this episode. No, but, you know, that's how I view it in a way. So I'm excited for all of that. You know, again, being a news producer, it's been kind of nice in a way
Mhm,
because every job I've ever had has been trial by fire. It's just
mhm.
been like, okay, here you go, have fun. And it's like, I'm 12. I don't know what's going on. And they're like, well, congratulations, you have a grown up job, you know? So,
Yes.
um, and I would say the theater is like that in general, frankly speaking. Any theatrical project I've been a part of has been very like, what's going on? Oh, that's going on? Oh, okay. You know, so I just, I'm doing my best to be zen about it. And just,
Yeah,
what I keep telling myself is like, it's going to be a wave that I'm just going to let wash over me to the best of my ability. And
yeah, I love
probably I'm
that.
going to
Love
get stressed seeing other people doing other things, being like, should I do that? Should I do that? I'm just going to try and like, it's a
it
tidal
reminds me of,
wave.
are you familiar with Bill Hicks at all? It reminds me of Bill Hicks. He is stand-up comedian, American stand-up comedian, and he used to say, "It's just a ride, man. It's just a ride." You get on the ride, you go up, you go down, you go round and round, and you can get off and start again. It's just a ride, and that's what the Fringe is gonna be for you, a ride.
Yeah. I just keep, I have some very, I have a really loving community in my life. And so people reach out to me and they are like, oh, I'm coming, I'd love to see your show. Should I come on this day or this day? And I'm like, I have no idea. All I know for a fact is that I will be in that space at 2:30. Beyond that, I do not know. I will not know. And how thrilling.
Mhm.
How
Yeah,
thrilling. For
yeah.
like there's so many, think about how many days pass where you're like, wow, I did nothing today.
Mhm.
I sat on my couch and I watched this thing and then it was nighttime and I went to bed. Like that's something that I'm looking forward to, which is like it's going to be a crazy time. I'm probably going to want to again throw up, rip my hair out, but then like what a story, Like I think back to all the most stressful moments I've ever had, which have been many. And those are the ones that I have a former boss who says, you can't achieve glory without anxiety. I think that's a strong take. I don't know that I would put that on a t-shirt and wear it,
Mhm.
but I do sort of agree that, if you
The
talk to
2
an
come together.
Olympian, yeah,
The
if you
2
talk to
come
an
together.
Olympian, you don't think they're scared a little bit of the jump or the, I don't know,
Yeah,
sports. You know what I mean? The
yeah,
net.
yeah.
Whatever it is. Like you have to have a little bit of that
To push you for
desire.
that pushes you forward, and also everything that I've found beautiful in life, everything that I've found worthwhile has become something when I push myself outside of my comfort zone. Is when I've really that normal circle that I'm in, when I've gone outside, that's when it's got better. That's when I've had the most fun, even though just as I'm gonna go out, I am petrified. And I'm about to do that next week. In fact, I'm about to jump out into a new realm, that actually something that didn't work out for me last time. So I'm going out of. I feel like I'm in a moment of pushing myself out of my comfort zone into a place where I stumbled before. So I'm having a little moment of, yeah, that energy, that anxiety is kind of building, and I'm trying to look at it like that. That anxiety is energy, and
Yeah, it's sort
that's
of like
something I can
scary
use.
delicious.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, ooh, I'm a little scared,
Yeah.
last time I did this, I messed up, or something got messed up and it didn't work out for me. But
Yeah.
then, like,
It's
maybe
almost like
not this
it's almost
time.
it's coming to me now that it's almost like it's a privilege to have that feeling, is it not? Aren't we lucky to have that in life? That we can have that feeling of fear, but just go in and do it anyway? 'Cause
Again,
there's a
like,
lot of people that can't. There's a lot of people that can't push past that.
and I didn't for a very long time.
Mhm,
So, that's something that I really relish in now, where people are like, "Oh, isn't that scary? Isn't that whatever?" And it's like, it is, but it's much better than, not going for something weird. Or, I always say that for me, comedy has always been about managing my own embarrassment, like looking back at all those
pushing through the
moments when I've
cringe.
been so embarrassed, or I've just been embarrassing, and
Mhm,
looking back and being like, "Oh, man, how am I gonna cope with this?" Like, and there's something really about, like, putting it up there where it's like, I don't need to be embarrassed by this anymore,
mm,
that's really freeing. And to your point, like, I think that's one of the things that keeps me alive in a big way, is that
mm.
I have that ability to be, like, unchained by these embarrassing things. Because there's so many people in our life where you're like, "Remember when you had orange hair?" And they're like, "We don't talk about that phase." Um, and why not, Why not?
Yeah, yeah, that cringe that we get as well. That's another thing that's been quite powerful for me is I wouldn't be doing this now. I wouldn't be doing this podcast has turned my life upside down in a good way, and I was definitely cringing for the first 10 episodes. I was having a real struggle with that, and I still do if I look back and I go back to the beginning and like watch episode 1 and I'm sitting in a chair like trying to talk to the camera and it's bad. Like, it's bad. And occasionally I tell people that, and they're like, delete it," and I'm like, "No, I need that there as a reminder that I push myself past it. I need that there so I can go, yeah, I did it.'"
Yeah, and also for other people, I think there's nothing more inspiring than finding somebody, like a new creator or a new,
Mhm.
YouTuber or something that I fall in love with, and then you go back to the beginning of their
Yes.
YouTube page or their thing, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Wow, this was terrible," you know?
Yeah,
But it's, like,
yeah.
motivating because 'cause you're like, but I can see even in this sort of, let's say, garbled phase, like, I
Mhm.
can see that, Martin really cares about theater. Martin really speaks from the heart, even if maybe his
Yeah.
audio was terrible, or maybe,
Yeah.
he was looking at the camera or whatever it was. It's like,
Yeah.
you can always still see what is the thing that is ultimately how they captivate an audience, even in those beginning phases when it was a little, let's say, muddled.
Yeah. There's a lot in that. Yeah, there's a lot in that potential, isn't there? There's and I like and thank you for saying that about like other people looking in because something that's happened naturally through this is I'm teaching other people how to podcast, and actually, I think I'm going to start. One of the big things that people get stuck on is just starting, and I'm going to point people back to my beginning episodes a little bit more about how that's so important. Look, you can literally see how bad I was in the early days. You can literally see how cringy it was, and maybe that would be really nice if that gave something to someone else.
Yeah, I always liken it to being an athlete, which I was never an athlete. I think I've talked about my couch 10 times because that's my sport. And but it's about the practice. It's about doing it every day. And that's the hardest part, like it's the hardest part about getting to the gym. It's the hardest part about starting a podcast, right? Everybody
Mhm.
always says like, "Oh, I can't stand the sound of my own voice." But at this point, I've heard my voice so much, like, I don't even hear her anymore, I'm
Yeah.
like, "That's not even me. That's like an amorphous blob. That's Marina,"
Mhm.
So, it's about, like, getting up on the mountain, getting up to the court. Like, it's just about the practice. Because with that practice, then you sort of lose that critical voice that wants to come in and say, "This is bad," or "This is not working," or "Oh my god, you're eye is a little droopy, the right one, and I know that you're sensitive about it, whatever it is. Um, that's what I keep reminding myself is every time that feeling comes up, I'm like, I just didn't have enough reps. If I had more reps, I wouldn't feel this way, or I wouldn't be sensitive about my voice or whatever it is, like there's something about practice makes. It's something about like, as we
Mhm.
can, life is a forever, we all want to get on that shelf and be like, it's done. I did it.
Mhm.
My podcast is perfect. I can now teach, to your
Yeah.
point, like I am now teacher. Um, when what a limiting box to put yourself in.
Yeah, it's that perfection thing. When we strive for the perfection, it just ends things. It just puts a full stop on it. Whereas this, what we're doing here, whether we're doing theatre, whether we're doing podcasts, we're always growing. We're always going for that next thing, and there's a lot of fun to be had in that.
Yeah, for sure. For
Mm.
sure.
So I wonder, I want to go back a little bit before we wrap this up, before we come to the end of this conversation. I want to do something that I haven't done on the podcast for a little while. Is I would actually like to go time traveling with you. I would like to go back in time and go and meet your younger version of yourself, that fifth grader, the true younger self. If we could go back, what moment would you go to go and meet her?
Oh my gosh. So many choices because it's like, do I go to the most intense one or, the moment that I talk about it in my show, but was a really big moment for me was, so for my fifth grade graduation, everybody had to submit a poem. And they
Mm.
actually chose my poem, which meant that I had to go up on stage and read my poem aloud to everybody, which was like a really big deal.
Scary.
For some reason, scary. What's
Mhm,
crazy is at the time, I didn't even register it was happening. Like I
mhm.
like rolled up to graduation and I was like, "Oh, I'm realizing now I have to read this and now I haven't prepared and I'm scared." Like
Yeah.
and as I mentioned, I had an episode where I forged a love letter from a girl to another boy. Very complicated. You'll have to see the show to find out why. And uh it was this big thing that I was like called into the principal's office. It was a huge scandal essentially that happened at my school. And after my speech or my poem, excuse me, I went back and then the principal got up and gave this speech that was sort of like, she was sort of recapping our time at school. She was like, in kindergarten, you went to the circus because we had this like circus day.
Mm,
You went in first grade, you went to the moon. And then she was like, in second grade, you wrote love letters to each other. And
mhm.
everybody turned to look at me, all the parents, all the kids, which is like, I didn't even know the parents knew about this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought this was like
Yeah,
an inner child
uh, thing.
scandal. I didn't realize this was like worldwide, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I remember just thinking, like, at the time I was going to go to a different school. I was going to go to this Catholic school, sound the alarm. And all my friends were going to go on to public school. And I remember thinking, like, I remember my main thought was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to live with the embarrassment of this. Like, I'm going to go to a new school and become a new person and, whatever. And I really think back on, like, I wish I could pull me aside and be like, yo, this principal is crazy. She's a grown woman who has called out a child in a graduation speech. That
Mhm,
is bonko territory. I wish her the best. God bless wherever she is, but like bonko territory. B, like, and also like shame on her for like using this love letter thing, which like ultimately was kind of cool and going to be one of your best stories of all time,
mhm,
against you. And see, like, yeah, you are going to another school. So, like, you don't have to deal with these kids anymore. But, like, even if you weren't, nobody's going to care in two
mhm.
years. Like, you don't have to be defined by this. Like, I feel like
It's
that
all
was the
parts.
first real, yeah, I feel like that was the first real moment where my brain started to sort of turn into,
Mhm.
like, oh, actually, I've been really cringy. I've been really embarrassing this entire time. And, like, now I get to hide.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment I would go back to, which is like, no, you're correct. Everybody else is wrong.
Oh.
And, it's not going to be perfect, but your impulse was right. I think the thing you said at the beginning really resonated with me, which was like, yeah, I think I was just a person who, I received a lot of love from my family, from my parents. And I
Mm.
think as a consequence of that, I wanted to share love and I wanted to feel loved and I wanted to, spread that energy around, which as a child, sometimes in misguided ways, but,
Yes.
really, I wish somebody had said that to me more directly. I feel like later in life I understood that over time. But if a future me could have come to little me and said that, that would have saved years and money of therapy for sure. So I think that's the moment that I would go to.
Mhm. Just to help yourself understanding that, yeah, you will move past this, and there are a lot of misguided people out there as well, that you'll meet along the way, and some of those misguided people may be teachers. They may be people that you don't expect to be the misguided ones, but yeah, you will pass this moment, and it will be okay. And so where would you go? Where would you like to go next in the time machine? And this time we could take, little me, little Marina into the time machine, into the future. Is there somewhere you'd like to show her? Perhaps maybe that you're on the road to the fringe?
I was about to say, yeah, the fringe
Mhm.
seems pretty. I don't plan more than 2 months at a time. So to say the future, ah, I don't want her to see AI. That
Mhm.
much I know for sure.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, I think that that's something I'll definitely carry with me when I go to the fringe, which is like, you were crazy, and it was definitely, and I say crazy lovingly, and you were definitely embarrassing, but as a consequence of that, we lived a very exciting life, and we get to continue to live a very exciting life, and people love these stories. People
Mhm.
really connect to these stories, like, at the peak of my most embarrassing moments, like, I talk about my grandpa a lot in the show, and, like, one big moment that I had to do with him was basically because he was really old school,
Mm.
because he was born in 1921. So you can imagine old school.
I see.
He would always chaperone me everywhere, even as a teenager, because he was like, you can't have loose women walking around by themselves. And so one of these moments basically culminated in him having to chaperone me to go to Italy's version of Victoria's Secret and, like, help me pick out bras, which was like, I mean, kill me. Do you know what I mean? Like, your 80-year-old grandpa, and he's in a
Mhm.
three-piece suit with a cane, and he's like, "I
Yeah.
like that bra." Like, terrifying.
Yeah.
And, like, he has since passed. He
Mhm.
lived to be 100, and, like, I get to memorialize him in that way,
Mm.
Everybody gets to know that he was there picking out bras with me, which he loved, of course.
Mhm.
Creepy. But he was, for him, it was the best time. For me, it was the best time, although inside I was, like, melting,
Mhm.
Um I get to memorialize him. I get to memorialize little me. I get to hopefully inspire people with these stories as they continue to inspire me, to remind me, like,
Mm.
in his way, he was trying to show his love for me. In little Marina's way, she was trying to connect with people and trying to be direct and upfront, which is something I think we all need today. I certainly need today.
Mm.
Um, that's I think probably a good moment for her, especially because after the fringe, boy, what's gonna happen to me? I don't know. We'll
No,
find out.
it's all open. It's all new ahead of you from there. This has been a wonderful conversation. I do have one last question for you that I ask of all of my guests at this point, because I think our stories, they have so much power, and there's something in there that this question that I pose to everyone, it gives us a different perspective on this, and so it's slightly different to what we've been talking about before. But I wonder, for you, Marina, how would you make this a better world?
Overall, I
However you
think
want to make it. Mm.
hmm, I think in the spirit of my show, it comes back to, I think most people, I won't speak for everyone, obviously. I think most people want to share and they want to share kindness. And I
Mhm.
think nowadays so many things get in the way of doing that, whether it's politics or, communications or unresolved issues or a myriad of things. It doesn't really matter. I think that at the core, people are about community. People want to find community. People want to connect with people. And I think if we can remind ourselves that that's what we want to do, that we want to branch out and meet new people, that we want to share kindness with people, um, that's how we feel most fulfilled. That's certainly how I feel most fulfilled in those moments in my life where I look back and I'm like, oh God, what was I doing? I didn't have a community and I wasn't seeking one,
Mhm.
and those were the times when I was most tormented by whatever my struggle was at that time. And I think, that's the thing that we've kind of lost as a whole is like, how can we really have each other's back? How can we, when something bad happens or something wrong happens, really show up for the people in our lives or show up for other people? Or like little me, if you don't have anybody or, your community is very small, how can you show up and put yourself out there and bring more people in? I
Mhm.
think if people had a wider communities and they knew more people and they connected with more people, I think that there could be more space for kindness, you know? I always think about my parents. I love them. They're from an older generation. Sometimes they don't understand what these kids are into?
Yes,
And I'm
yeah, yeah.
not saying that they should make friends with kids. That's
Mhm.
weird. But, because I have a wide friend group, my sibling has a wide friend group, like they're able to meet more people. They're able to understand more, what these
Mhm.
kids are doing, as they say. So, um, I think that's what I would bring into the world is just an
Yeah.
openness to find community, to welcome more community, as scary and as cringy as that is.
No, it's wonderful, and it takes me back to that takes me back to you going to the Fringe, and I would say that, I don't often give advice, but I would say as you go into the Fringe, that's the most important thing for you to do. Go out there and be part of the community. Go and find your people while you're there. Embrace others, and, it's definitely a space that others will embrace you too.
Yeah, I just said that and I'm terrified. That's the thing that
Of course,
terrifies me
yeah,
most
yeah.
is to
But
go up to people and be like, "Hi,"
Mhm,
but every day I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, "This is what we're gonna do.
mhm.
Martin told us to do this. Little me told us to do this. We have to do this."
Yeah,
So I'll
and I
take that to
think
heart.
the thing that you can do at Edinburgh, though, that's a little bit different to other places in the world, is you can go up to people with a flyer for your show and say hi. So
Right.
you're doing a show there. You've already got a reason to say hello, and that's where it starts. That's where the connection starts with just a smile and a hello, and it can run from there. And yeah, and if you need something else, you're doing a show. So ask people to come.
Exactly. Well, I'm so excited.
Yeah, so am I. I'm so excited to see your show. So tell me, where are we going to find your show? Where are you on?
So I am with Bra Venues. I am at their Hill Street Theater. It's the Muse. I think it's venue 41 is the number, and I will be at 2:30 p.m. I am the first 2 weeks of the Fringe. So I will start on the 7th of August and I will end on the 20th. So those first 2 weeks I will be performing there, and that's where I'll be hanging out, as they
That's
say.
where we find you. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I really do appreciate it. It was a wonderful thing to listen to your story, to your journey, and I look forward to hearing more within your show. Thanks again, Marina.
Wonderful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful, no problem at all. And if anyone has been watching or listening, we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you. Bye bye.